Morning. Welcome everyone to the meeting of the Barrie Police Service Board for September 18th, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with our land acknowledgement. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it is customary to acknowledge the traditional territories and ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. We would like to acknowledge this sacred land on which the Barrie Simcoe Emergency Service Campus operates. It has been a site for human activity for over 15,000 years. This land is the ancestral land of the Wendat and Anishinaabe Nation. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaty. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect. Miigwech, thank you. Our agenda was distributed in advance. It is a very heavy agenda today as we welcome back from our summer break. A motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Khan, Mayor Nuttall, any amendments, changes, or adjustments to the agenda? Those in favor? Thank you. Does any members of the board have any conflict of interest they'd like to declare with respect to today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. I would also like to acknowledge, other than our normal guests, we also have Ryan Berrigan from the Inspector of Policing, our advisor to our board. Ryan, welcome to the Barrie Police Service Board this morning. Minutes were distributed for our June 19th, 2025 meeting. A motion to approve those. Mr. Khan, Deputy Mayor Thompson, any amendments, changes, or questions with respect to those minutes? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Chief, for some very important and new promotions. Chief Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Generally, when we have the opportunity at a board meeting, we like to present badges, but in this case, both of our new sergeants that are being introduced to the board were given their badges at an earlier date, one in front of their platoon and the other at a morning meeting. Again, with scheduling and such, they went right to work pretty much as soon as they were promoted. So I did want to give the board just a little background on both of them. Again, I'll start with Sergeant Melanie Turner, who's joined here today by her husband, Gary, a longtime serving member, now retired. So Sergeant Melanie Turner has over 20 years of policing experience, beginning with Peel Regional Police in 2003, before joining the Barrie Police Service in 2008. She's worked in frontline patrol, specialized investigations, corporate roles, and now serves as a victim liaison sergeant in the courts unit, where she supports victims through the justice system. Her background includes leading complex cases in the Crimes Against Person unit, along with assignments as a media relations officer, school resource officer, and youth crime prevention officer. She has been recognized with multiple commendations for professionalism, compassion, and investigative excellence. Actively engaged in her community, Sergeant Turner contributes to the EDI committee and enjoys playing pickleball, which I understand is almost cult-like at this point. She holds degrees from University of Toronto and the University of Windsor, along with extensive training through the Ontario Police College. Outside work, she's a proud wife and a mother of two active teen boys, one very active in football and one very active in hockey, and that is a full-time job right there. So we do congratulate Sergeant Turner on her promotion. Next is Sergeant Jonathan Barnes. Sergeant Jonathan Barnes has proudly served with the Barrie Police Service since 2008, bringing over 16 years of dedication to public safety and community well-being. His career began as an auxiliary officer and special constable, laying the foundation for a diverse and impactful path in policing. Throughout his service, Sergeant Barnes has contributed to a wide range of units, including frontline patrol, high enforcement in the downtown core, the drug unit, and recently just completed over a 5-year stint in a joint force operation with organized crime with the biker enforcement unit. His adaptability, commitment, expertise, and experience have made him a respected and effective member of the Barrie Police Service and leader across multiple areas of law enforcement. Although he has lived in various parts of the world, Barrie has always been home. Proud husband and father of three, Sergeant Barnes has been a dedicated community volunteer for over 20 years, demonstrating his deep-rooted commitment to making a positive difference both in and out of the uniform. And I will also note he took the time to come in and we have chats with the chief to offer constructively critical a critique of our areas in the organization, which we took to heart and made alterations within the organization as a direct result. People who care are engaged like that. So we're quite proud to promote Sergeant Jonathan Barnes.
Next on today's agenda is our first review of the draft proposed budget for 2026. The intent today is to have Senior Command present their proposal. This board will reconvene on September the 22nd, which I believe is Monday, in which we will then take a deeper dive into the budget proposal. With that, I'll hand it over to initially to Chief Johnson to walk us through the budget request. Chief?
Thank you, Chair. Just let the PowerPoint load up here. So good morning, members of the board. As we present the 2026 budget requirements, our intention is to be as transparent as possible and outline in as much detail as we can the financial pressures and opportunities that are impacting the Barrie Police Service. Many of the financial pressures we will outline are not unique to us and are being experienced province-wide. With the continued implementation of the Community Safety and Policing Act, changes in grant and funding programs, and general economic conditions that are being felt across the country. As the chief, deputy, and leadership team, we assume the responsibility of constantly review the way we deliver service to our community, find efficiencies, to explore all revenue and funding opportunities, to make strategic investments, to minimize risks and prepare for the future, and ultimately to ensure our budget requests are necessary to provide adequate and effective policing to our community. Like last year, we have organized the impacts of the 2026 budget into three main themes to illustrate the various financial pressures both internally and externally, and the need to adapt to growing and changing needs, both now and in the future. We've labeled the three main budget themes as foundational policing, external pressures, and our growing and changing community. When we say foundational policing, we're referring to the core of the Barrie Police Service. The investments we have made in our people, the members that serve our community every day, continuation of the great work our members are doing to engage with our community, protect our community, and serve our community. There's a lot to be proud of when looking at the Barrie Police Service. The board has made investments in body-worn cameras, recognizing the positive impact the cameras have on transparency, both members and residents. We recently upgraded our tasers after more than a decade, which provides a safer, less lethal use of force option. New programs are being implemented, such as virtual call response, digital automation, and leveraging evidence-based approaches. All these changes allow us to more efficiently utilize our resources without sacrificing the service we provide to the public. Officers can return to the road quicker, increasing our presence in the community. We're enhancing our traditional training methods with virtual reality to create real-world scenarios that would otherwise be cost prohibitive. This blended strategy not only ensures our members are equipped to respond to new potential threats, but also provides more effective training for social disorder and mental health related calls for service. Together with our service partners, we are working towards a social service campus and justice center, supporting the community alternative response and engagement team, a non-police emergency response with community partners, Simcoe County Paramedics and the Canadian Mental Health Association, Simcoe County, and allocating resources and support to victims through a trauma-informed approach. Finally, the investments the board has made in member wellness are paying dividends, and we are reaping the benefits with more members returning to the workplace, which we will discuss in more detail. Service has implemented multiple wellness initiatives and programs to support our members both physically and mentally, including the Fitness Pin Incentive, Safeguard Program, Road to Mental Readiness, Peer Support Team, Reintegration Program, which the board was presented with, and more recently, the Mental Health Incentive and Anti-Stigma Campaign. These programs run in conjunction with our health and wellness benefit package to ensure our members and their families are being supported both proactively and reactively to build resilience and protect both physical and mental well-being. As you can see, we had 71 additional members access mental health supports in 2024 compared to 2023. This is likely driven by the Mental Health Incentive and Anti-Stigma Campaign that connects members with a mental health practitioner to establish a baseline relationship for the very real possibility that they will be exposed to mental stress injuries in the future. Research demonstrates that investing in mental health supports results in substantial cost savings by reducing the need for more intensive and expensive interventions later on. It also increases a member's overall well-being and productivity and reduces lost time and healthcare costs. It is a very proactive approach. Our members have self-reported an increase in their mental health between 2023 and 2024 as captured through our member census. These investments in our member wellness are improving the health of our members, and the service is realizing the return on investment with one of the lowest percentage of members off work across the province. Our members are better prepared to serve the community and respond to the various scenarios that they will encounter on a daily basis. We've spoken in the past on why deployable resources is a more meaningful representation of service to the community compared to authorized strength. Deployable resources represent the actual number of sworn officers that are available to respond to calls and serve our community. The steps the board has taken in the past 2 years to replace members off on mental stress injuries, alongside the multiple wellness initiatives and programs discussed, has put the Barrie Police Service in the best position to date. We are pleased to report that our deployable resources for the first time ever are in line with our authorized complement. We would highlight that even at full authorized strength, this doesn't mean we will be immune to mental stress injuries in the future. Due to the nature of the work our members are involved with, there is still significant risk of mental stress injuries, and no amount of staffing can prevent that. That's the reality of policing. I'm going to hand it over to our finance manager, Tyrell.
So salaries are derived from our collective agreement and include all wage adjustments, reclassifications for the wage grid, promotions, transfers, premiums, and retirement provisions. Health and wellness benefits include medical and dental supports, such as CPP and EI, OMERS, life insurance, long-term disability, and AD&D coverage. The financial impact for benefits is driven by an increase in healthcare practitioner costs, increase in member usage, and an increase in total members. Asset and infrastructure renewal includes critical IT infrastructure, vehicles, equipment, radio and communications, hardware and devices, CCTV, and other specialized equipment replacements required to provide adequate and effective use. All procurement is reviewed to ensure we are achieving value per dollar without sacrificing quality and effectiveness. Useful life is extended and replacement deferred where possible. And then finally, through comprehensive review, validation, and analysis of our budget, we have identified approximately 690,000 in efficiencies and savings, despite seeing declining interest rates. Overall, foundational policing, which represents the investments in our people and the great work they do every day, totals 3.99% impact on the 2026 budget. For the second theme of our 2026 budget presentation, we have regrouped financial impacts that are outside of our window of control and are being driven by provincial and federal government programs and policies, as well as greater macroeconomic conditions. We have referred to these as external pressures. The first and most significant financial pressure for this grouping is an increasing funding gap for court security and prisoner transportation costs. As you can see, court costs have been increasing annually. However, provincial funding provided through the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Grant is expected to decrease significantly in 2026. With changing reporting parameters and received clarification on eligible expenses, the service is anticipating that only a portion of the court costs will be eligible for the grant, and of those eligible expenses, only a portion will be funded. This equates to an estimated 44% of total court costs being funded, and a shortfall reaching 2.7 million in 2026. The provincial funding gap is expected to increase by 1.25 million between 2025 and 2026, creating a financial pressure of 1.73% on the 2026 budget. The total funding pot of 125 million provincially is not expected to change and hasn't increased in over a decade, despite heightened inflation and costs. It's important to note that Barrie represents less than half of the court cases of the Barrie Courthouse, and the unfunded court security costs are borne by the City of Barrie taxpayers, despite providing the service to several OPP detachments, police services, and CFP board and military police within the region. The next main financial impact is driven by the continued implementation of the Community Safety and Policing Act as the service adapts to the new legislation. Financial pressures are being experienced primarily from new training requirements across the service, such as the new mental health and crisis response, and the significant increase in officers requiring incident command training. The Act also includes a requirement for additional safety equipment and uniforms, such as the requirement for special constable uniforms to be distinguishable from a sworn officer, which has resulted in the need to reissue all of our special constables with new uniforms. Finally, economic conditions are also having a direct impact on the service, as new contracts and procured items are costing more through inflation, the reduced value of the Canadian dollar, and the impact of tariffs on some items that aren't protected under the temporary public safety, national security exemption, and remission program. In total, external pressures account for a 3.15% increase on the 2026 budget and are outside of our ability to influence.
For our last main theme, a growing and changing community. We want to spend some time outlining the various ways that growth and change are impacting the Barrie Police Service. When we think of growth, we think of an increasing population and more residents and visitors, and this is true. Population in Barrie has grown close to 3% each year for the past 2 years, and it's expected to grow at that rate every year until we reach 298,000 by 2051. We've also seen an increase of 1,768 households between 2023 and 2024. However, the Barrie Police Service are being impacted by growth beyond just the increase in population. Scope of work the Barrie Police Service is increasing, and this has a direct impact on resources. Sworn officers, special constables, and members across the service are required to plan, facilitate, respond, and engage in an array of activities throughout our community. As Barrie grows, our community plays host to a number of different special events, including concerts, air show, and festivals, and more. Barrie is a regional hub and supports seasonal influxes of visitors and tourists from the county of Simcoe and far beyond. Also, as I'm sure you can appreciate, the world we live in today is vastly different than the world of the past. The increasingly complex societal challenges, including the prevalence of homelessness, addiction, and mental health, has changed the way we must respond to our community. Finally, policing is one of the most heavily regulated industries, and we're evolving to ensure that we're providing transparency, privacy, and are demonstrating value and performance to our community. The complexity of calls for service and investigations are also increasing. Barrie Police Service must adapt and expand our capabilities to respond to growing threats, including fraud, human trafficking, organized crime, and auto thefts, increased major crimes and intimate partner violence, illicit drug shops, and more sophisticated tech crimes. All while our communication channels are growing and changing, our court system is overburdened, and we are living in a time of increased cybersecurity threats. Even with the growth experienced in the city of Barrie, our efforts to address crime harm have proven successful. With harm rates decreasing year over year, as the city continues to grow, we will continue to address the highest harm offenses, individuals, and high volume harm drivers. We must adapt and evolve, and we are. We're making the investments in our technology, platforms, and equipment to respond to the changing times. Service is heavily reliant on technology provided by Axon platforms and hardware, which allow us to maximize efficiency and accountability and officer support. Most of us are well aware of the benefits of body-worn cameras or BWCs and tasers bring to the frontline policing. And over the past few years, these tools have become integral to our operations. In addition to BWCs and tasers, we've adopted a number of innovative platforms that enhance how we collect, manage, and share evidence, keeping us ahead of the technological evolution. These tools help to better manage digital evidence, including obtaining digital evidence from the public, transition from hard copy to digital processes, and provide alternate training methods using virtual reality. Being part of the Axon ecosystem ensures that these tools all work together seamlessly. This can provide efficiency, enhance officer safety and performance, and contribute to public perceptions of transparency and accountability. Next, we would like to have our IT manager, TJ, speak to how we have addressed the increased risk of cybersecurity threats. TJ.
Morning. Cybercrime incidents, ransomware attacks, fraud scams, and impersonation attempts are more prevalent than ever. These cyber attacks have increased against local governments and more specifically towards emergency medical services and law enforcement agencies. These are close to home as attacks against the Sault Ste. Marie Police in 2021, the Port Hope Police in 2023, the RCMP in 2024, and most recently the Kingston Police earlier this year. Fraud and impersonation scams are also increasing exponentially with the evolution of AI creating more sophisticated attacks. These cyber attacks can hinder both emergency and non-emergency systems, affecting our ability to provide service to our community for lengthy periods. They can result in significant financial costs to restore, rebuild, and adapt to identified security threats. The risk of a breach of police data, both operationally and reputationally, could have a significant impact on the credibility and public trust of the Barrie Police Service. The initial cost of our required response to a cyber incident would be nearly $400,000 in legal and counseling fees prior to even beginning a rebuild. The City of Hamilton recently released that their costs related to their cyber incident in 2024 have risen to nearly $18.3 million. In an effort to mitigate these risks, we are investing in critical IT infrastructure, including our firewalls, zero trust, cybersecurity software, offsite data replication, hardening of our backup communications center, and creating network redundancies. With the continued digitalization of the way we do business, the need for these protections is greater than ever. To reduce this risk, we conduct ongoing phishing campaigns, training for our members that provide real-time metrics and inform us where additional training is needed. We also leveraged our supervisor training day to provide a comprehensive overview to leaders of the organization. And we're making significant strides in mitigating risk with continued strategic investments in IT infrastructure, security, and ongoing training programs.
TJ. Although we have increased our proactive policing efforts, including enhanced community engagement, presence, and visibility, when looking at our call volumes, we can see an upward trend in the 2023 remaining an outlier in the data. This is true even in consideration of the increase in commitment to proactive policing that strives to minimize the impact on victims, but also deter crime. The impacts from our growing and changing community result in both direct financial costs and increased demands on our sworn officers. With the full year of annualization of new staff hired in 2025, the reduced funding available from the operating reserve and the growth areas identified, the overall impact of our growing and changing community 2.76. We committed to bringing back to the board options and a recommendation for a growth plan that includes required growth elements and an additional staffing required to keep up with our continually growing city. We've recommended an increase of 6 sworn frontline officers and 4 civilian or special constable support roles. To outfit our officers requires vehicles, radios, firearms, hard armor, an array of equipment and uniform items, extensive legislative training, and access to multiple software and licenses. For 2026, we believe the greater need and support is with the civilian roles. However, we have intentionally left it open between civilian or special constables to ensure we're making the best decision for the service at the time of hiring. The civilian roles will likely be in communications, digital evidence management, and tactical crime operations analysis, with the growth and need being experienced in these areas. The recommended start date would be July 1st. However, as you can see, increasing or decreasing the overall complement, along with the starting these roles sooner rather than or later, will affect the overall budget and defer the full year annualization until 2027. We'd like to highlight some of the potential budget amendments to assist in reducing the overall budget impact for 2026. And for that, I'll be back to Ty.
The First Amendment represents the additional revenue expected from increasing user fees, as outlined in the 2 board reports for paid duties and records fees. The Second Amendment would reduce the transfer to the WSIB reserve from currently at $700,000 to $550,000 for 2026. As referenced earlier, the success in more members returning to work has resulted in a reduction in associated benefit and administration expenses through the WSIB. And with the reduced contribution, we're still confident we have sufficient funds available in the reserve to cover expected costs for 2026. Also, we have built up a forecasted surplus in our capital reserve, as outlined in the Q2 budget variance report results through leveraging grant funding, provincial rebates that can be redirected to fund 2026 capital needs. If all 3 amendments are supported by the board, this would reduce the 2026 budget request by $495,000 or 0.69%. With the 3 main areas impacting the 2026 budget request, the recommended growth plan and the recommended budget amendments, the total 2026 budget request is $80.3 million or an 11.12% increase. This does not reflect increased property tax assessment revenue from growth, which could be expected to reduce the budget impact by 3%. The budget also includes the impacts of provincial downloaded services such as the court security and prisoner transportation that are only partially funded, and provincial legislation such as the Community Safety and Policing Act and WSIB mental stress injuries where no funding has been provided. Recognizing the exceptionally difficult budget year, we have provided some additional options for board consideration. We haven't included these in the recommended budget as they require additional board direction, assume additional risk, and defer resources that will enhance this service to the community ultimately. The first item involves the renegotiation of a technology contract. We will be providing additional information during the closed section to understand the potential savings here. For the second potential amendment, we've included relevant IT infrastructure and security costs within our NG 911 Phase 4 grant submission that would assist in funding 2026 budget items. We expect to receive confirmation from the province on whether the grant is successful in February, March of 2026. So accounting for that now within the 2026 budget, we would be taking the risk if the grant was unsuccessful, which could put us in a deficit position for 2026. And then finally, as identified in the growth plan option slide, if we deferred new staffing requests until the fall of 2026, this could further reduce our budget request by 0.56%. This would mean additional officers wouldn't be available for the busy summer months. The chief will now conclude the budget presentation.
We recognize the significance of the proposed budget request. Currently, we have strived to maximize revenues, find efficiencies, spur needs where feasible, and draw from reserves to help mitigate the impact to residents. However, the reality is that a significant part of our budget increase is the result of changes at the provincial level, external pressures outside of our control, and increased demands and expectations from the community. We believe advocacy is necessary at the provincial level to communicate the financial pressures that are being experienced within our community and the impact on the City of Barrie taxpayers. We've included in the board package the letter we submitted on behalf of the Barrie Police Service to the Minister of Finance and have highlighted areas we believe advocacy from the board could help address the identified funding shortfalls and pressures being experienced. As you know, there's a scheduled special budget meeting for this coming Monday, September 22nd. This will allow for dedicated time to discuss the budget proposal, provide any additional information, or answer any questions once you've had a chance to review the presentation and consider the options provided. If there's any information that you would like to have in order to have a fulsome discussion on Monday, please let us know. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Johnson, and thank the entire team. I know the effort that has gone into getting us to this stage. It is not a short process, and there have been a number of options and drafts and looked at to get us to this stage. But I wanted to thank you and the team for all the efforts that got us to this stage. And as the chief has mentioned, we have a meeting on Monday specifically to only agenda items is to address the budget. Is there any initial questions that they have? Mayor Donald, please.
Yeah, thank you. My first question, there was a slide on the external pressures. I think there's two out of those three. I don't know if we can go back to it, that I would agree are external pressures. I'm not sure inflation is one of them, and I'm not sure people will accept inflation as one of them. So if it's tariffs, sure. But inflation, like we were seeing a major reduction in inflation. The expectation, I think, of every entity everywhere is to find efficiencies in the year you're operating in order to, combat inflation. If your efficiencies exceed your inflation, you're doing a good job. You're making ground. So, but for me, I think the top two are external pressures. I think that we should document them as such. I'm not sure that I can accept, unless it's like 100% related to tariffs, that these additional external pressures are there. The other thing I would ask is, has there been a buy Canadian procurement piece put into the Barrie Police Service?
Thank you, Chair. Where we can, yes. There are certain things that you cannot find a Canadian post. Yeah.
And are you seeing a higher cost? Are you seeing higher costs related to that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we've seen higher costs. Those costs aren't as high as they were a couple of years ago when inflation was very heightened. Definitely, just general costs have kind of stabilized, in the last year or so. But we do run into some situations where, we've been in kind of like a 3-year contract with the vendor. So, at the time of renewal, we have, we see the big jump, at those times. So I think generally what we're seeing from service-wide is probably similar to what, we're just seeing for costs and kind of a personal level as well. If that helps.
Okay, thank you. When this is presented, I think public, I know we're going to go over this on Monday. I would present it as two separate numbers, like the Barrie Police numbers X and the increasing deficit report costs from downloading from the province, along with the new regulations and legislation, are Y. We can control X, we can't control Y. And I would literally put Barrie Police increase, and then I would put provincial downloading increase. And I would not merge those numbers in any piece of any presentation. That's what I would do with the city. It's transparent, it provides for accountability, it provides for conversation, and it's politically smart to do. When we see numbers like 11, it starts, or 10 or 9, starts to make me think of, okay, what do we need to consolidate in order to find savings, find efficiencies? What services are at the Barrie Police Service, that are at the Barrie Fire Service, that are at the City of Barrie, and that are not covered by legislation? Because obviously there's going to be a ton that's just covered by legislation under the Barrie Police Service. So if I could have a list of those services that are not legislatively determined, so that we can look at where potential cost savings are before Monday, that would be fantastic. The hiring dates, and there was a slide that showed that it was costing more to hire in July 1st than April 1st. Can someone explain that?
So
It says 0.56 increase on option B, I'll call it. 0.56 April, 1.9 in July.
Yeah, so the way this table is structured, so the middle line there, which is kind of our recommended growth plan, has the 6 and the 4 civilian. So the recommendation is July 1st. That would impact our budget by 1.9%. If we were to move up the hiring to April 1st, there'd be an additional cost, 0.56%. If we were to defer that hiring until October 1st, then that would be a savings of 0.56% on our budget. And then the line above and below is kind of like the low, medium, and high. So the first option only has 8 resources, and then the bottom line has 14 resources. So that's why the costs change on those kind of lower and bottom line. and everything, all of the percentages on this slide are relative to the existing 1.9% that's highlighted there. That's within the recommended budget. So everything is relative to that on how it would impact the total budget.
And I apologize, Your Worship, just because we wanted to get, it's the board's options and we just wanted to present. So it depends when you hire them and when we absorb those costs and how many. And again, put to the board is that is what the options available.
That makes a lot more sense. With regards to the full complement chief that you mentioned, that's today.
Yes, sure.
Okay, and so this does what to the full complement?
That would raise our, so 250 was that full complement from
2018, 17 or something.
so this would grow the size of the service. It would increase the complement of the organization. Okay.
So just some feedback to the chair and budget. I don't love omnibus unless I'm doing it myself. I don't love omnibus unless I do it myself. If we're going to make a determination on the complement for the city, I want to make that determination. I don't want to do it in the budget process that I don't understand. So if that's a thing that wants to be moved forward with, I expect a full report before Monday and before we discuss it to outline what it means, what's the vision, where are we going to, how many's the number. Otherwise, you're leading me on a leash down a road I don't understand where I'm going.
See any problem with that, Chief? Chief? Put together for Monday.
Yes, we'll have that done.
Any other questions at this stage for Chief and team on the budget?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks all for the information so far. Thanks kindly. Apologies. Just picking up where the mayor left off. Where's the gap? So those numbers are great, but what are they solving? What problem are they solving other than just adding complement, right? Did have two questions that I think are similarly related though. In terms of forecasting, we talked about the size of the city growing. We talked about the population, growing as well as geographically. And then some of the pressures that we face with officers being otherwise taken off the road to address whether it's reporting or tied up at the hospital, things like that. As the city continues to grow, and as we know, the boundaries may or may not be shifting, but we're also developing Southlands, for example, travel time to and from North End, South End, East, West, et cetera, continues to increase. Even lights and sirens, I'm sure there's a delay of getting an officer from the farthest point of the northeast quadrant to the southeast quadrant, for example. As we grow, is there a pressure that we need to be able to address or forecast for as our officers may be taken farther from a centralized deployment, for example, where we see hotspot requirements, et cetera? So that's one question. Do you want to answer them in order, or can I just keep going?
I'll answer them as an omnibus answer as I try.
Wow. All right. The other question I have though is, can we get an idea? I know effort was made and progress was made in terms, especially with the special constables, to do a sort of a handoff once potential prisoners maybe are being addressed at the hospital. Are we seeing progress in terms of turnaround time to be able to get officers back on the road, or are they still being tied up? Leave you there for a minute.
Chief, you either can answer that now if it's off the top of your head, or we can defer to answer on Monday's meeting. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and answer what I can, and if I miss any of the parts there, please, I can certainly revisit it. So the gap, and let me address that. And I think, and thank you, Board Member Khan, for the question, but I think In part, the answer to that is partly in the question you asked. Our city is getting bigger and it's taking us longer to get to different places. And, it's a poor decision on a Friday afternoon of a long weekend in the summer to go to the north end of the city and even look at an arterial road. At least it's a parking lot no matter where you go. And it's not a knock on it. It is a beautiful city. It's a growing city and there's volume going through the city. And so there's a question of, there's always been a finite number of officers and members in this organization. And there's been an increasing amount of work. And it speaks to, again, the board's heavily invested in the wellness of those members. But with more work and the same finite resource, that division, the numbers there, it's the same number of officers are doing more and more. And the idea being is in a growing city, the ability to respond more effectively and given that the actual nature of our job is becoming increasingly complex, we're required to do many things for many people at many times. And so the idea being these growing number of office or the growing service is to respond to an ever growing city. And if you were to ask me, like, so is there a point at which we no longer need officers or the growth? It depends on the size of the city. There's no perfect number, but I'm going to suggest to you that with the growing city and the growing problems and the growing size, our ability to respond is directly tied to how many resources we have. We can be in more places, more times, more people. So we'll leverage technology as best we can, and we have. And to your point, to the special constables, we have leveraged them. They've gone over incredibly well where we can in terms of crime scene, where we have an officer posted. We've now had special constables where we can hand off and not hand off in a in an irresponsible manner, but to a peace officer, a special constable in the hospital, we do. And I think that's incredibly valuable. And it allows that officer, the sworn officer, back on the road to answer calls and to be available for emergency response and to proactively engage with the community. So it's this and this and this and this, not this or that. So it's the size is an ask, and we will come back with that. And as a growing city, I think there's an expectation that we're able to do more. And we're trying. And special constables are one of those avenues. So I think, did I miss any of them?
Thanks. I'm going to have to cut the questions off only because that's why we had a special meeting called for Monday. Otherwise, we won't get through today's agenda. So what I would suggest is Lynn has one. She says, yeah, all questions are welcome. We can send them through to the chief and he'll answer them on Monday. So that's otherwise we would take up our 2 hours for budget. So listed. So I see Eric's just said, no, I got to have one more. Yeah, I think that the board, and I encourage lots of questions. But when it reconvene on Monday, this is what we're looking for. That will allow you the time to do it, summarize it, but I'm just cognizant that we have a very heavy agenda today. That the purpose was to put the first draft in front of us and to facilitate this questioning process, but we can't accommodate our meeting to do the work that needs to be done to vet this proposal is meant to happen. Members of the board okay with that? So again, thanks, Chief. I say I encourage everyone to please forward your questions. And Chief will and team will address them on our meeting on Monday. There were 6 items in today's consent agenda. Letter to the finance, which was referred, Mr. Finance, which was referred to in the budget proposal, the budget variance for Q2, and that will be one of my questions for Monday's meeting. What surplus funds, if any, are available to apply to the budget? Time and attendance, professional standards report, human resource report, special constable, and auxiliary appointment terminations. Are any of those items any member would like to hold? I assume that's approved on consent. Thank you. The audio and video fee schedule, is that a motion, Sarah? Okay, so included in our package was an adjustment to the audio and video fee schedule. Mr. Turner did reference to the additional revenues in the budget proposal. A motion to approve that new fee schedule, Mr. John. Seconder. Deputy Mayor Thompson, any questions or comments? Is it enough? The analysis done in there, we're kind of in the middle. I would say it would be the, we were in the lower end. And now we've bumped it up into the sort of into the middle in terms of that fee schedule. So we look at it annually, but we're moving it enough. We'd like it to be more perhaps, but that's the recommendation of staff at this time. All in favor? Thank you. The same in our report was an increase in the pay duty fees charged by the service for pay duties. A motion to approve those changes. Thompson, any questions, comments about those fees? All in favor? Thank you. Back over to you again, Chief, for your, but usually it's a monthly update. It may be a little more considering we have 3 months to deal with. So, Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Have that brought up. Thank you. So Chair, Board, thank you once again for this opportunity to keep you and the community apprised of just a few things that our members have been up to over the last few summer months in our community. It's been a very, very busy few months. June 26th was a busy day for the Barrie Police Service. At our headquarters, the Barrie Police held, the city of Barrie held a flag raising ceremony for the new Canadian flag, which proudly flies at the back of the campus here. We also joined Barrie Fire for a presentation of a commemorative BPS jersey from the 911 Crosstown hockey game held in April. Chief of Fire was here as well. And members of our downtown engagement team attended the City of Barrie Centennial Beach Media Day to launch the summer season. July 1st, some of our members assisted at the in Ottawa for the assisting the Ottawa Police for Canada Day celebrations. Again, our highly visible vehicle was very present there, and a number of people noted that, as well as the children came over for some pictures. We were also at the Barrie waterfront for the Canada Day Air Show, a very successful event once again. Since our last meeting, we've had a busy summer, obviously, with our downtown engagement and city guardian teams being particularly active in our downtown core. Some of the events the Barrie Police has participated in. July 4th, myself and the deputy relived the glory days with a walk along with our city guardians downtown. July 12th was the Butter Tart Festival. July 16th, Tim Hortons Camp Day. July 21st, the service met with Rudy from Rockin' It with Rudy. My kids were more Wiggles fans, but I'm dating myself. July 26th was the Classic Car Show. August 1st, Chair Ferguson did a walk along with our guardian and our downtown team, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions as to that experience. I understand it was very positive. August 2nd was Kempin Fest. August 14th, Pakistan's Independence Day flag raising. August 15th, Indian Independence Day. August 16th, the Dragon Boat Festival. September 6th, members, including the deputy, participated in the Walk a Mile event. Bright red shoes. I understand the deputy's ankle's still hurting. That's good. Although there were typically fewer meetings over the summer months, we did continue our monthly meetings with the City of Barrie, as well as have several opportunities to connect with our local MPPs, as well as Councillor Nagusi. We also welcome the Associate Solicitor General of Auto Theft and Bail Reform, Z. Hamid, for an auto theft roundtable and look at our use of the provincial bail compliance dashboard. Communications Administrator Monique Boucher and organizational researcher Madison Sharman joined representatives from the CARE team, and that's the non-police emergency response to mental health, in presenting at the Law Enforcement and Public Health Conference. And Inspector Gates presented at on the Canadian version of the 30 by 30 initiative, 30 Forward, at the OACP annual conference. Very hearty congratulations to Constable Mel Palma who competed on behalf of the Barrie Police Service at the World Police and Fire Games, bringing home a gold medal in jiu-jitsu. Constable Palm is down at the Ontario Police College as a trainer down there on secondment. Also of note, his son is a Toronto police officer who also won gold in jiu-jitsu at the same game. So it was a family event, and well done by Mel. The Barrie Police Service has been recognized along with the association as one of the healthiest workplaces by Dialogue Health Technologies. This award is a celebration of our organization's efforts to prioritize member well-being and create a supportive and healthy work environment. Again, in our thanks to the board for their strong support of that. As you can imagine, we've had a long list of occurrences that are noteworthy, but I'll stick to 3 here. On June 27th, another arrest was made in relation to a 2023 bank robbery investigation, part of the OPP's Project Opal. On July 3rd, additional charges were laid against the suspect in the Mayfair Drive assault for an assault earlier in 2025. On July 30th, our major investigation into a double homicide began. And on August 18th, the robbery took place at a jewelry store in Georgian Mall. And 5 suspects were located and arrested shortly after in the area of Highway 400 and Innisfil Beach Road. So some great police work. On Monday, June 16th, we launched our enhanced downtown team, continuing on the successful initiative from the summer of 2024. This initiative continues into the fall, and our special constables and police constables have been very active across our downtown core. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Downtown Engagement Team from June 16th to September 10th, did the following: 1,000 offense. 900 of these were proactive. 100 were dispatched as calls for service. 53 arrests, 2 criminal charges, 24 instances of drugs being seized, 18 instances of alcohol being seized. Our city guardians, beginning on June 16th up to September 10th in terms of statistics, 1,383 events, total time spent. I mean, it's 292 hours or 17,520 minutes. Average time spent at a stop or location, 13 minutes. 1,096 of these were proactive, with 287 of them of the total 1,300 were dispatched to a call for service. And again, a number of them. So the bus terminal, City Hall, Downtown Library, Meridian Place, all experienced multiple hundreds of presences of those guardians over that time period. And I think that their presence was well received by our community. The fall shows no letting up, some upcoming events. We have the second year of our Building Bridges Evidence-Based Policing Conference coming up that we're heavily involved in. The National Peace Officers Memorial Run starting in Toronto and finishing in Ottawa ahead of the National Police and Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony will be taking place. The deputy will be in town, present as the Canadian Armed Forces march through to attend City Hall. Oh, and it may not be happening, so I will skip that event. Needless to say, we have multiple events going on this fall. I apologize, I wasn't aware. But with that, Chair, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Chief Johnson. Any questions for the chief? Scott, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for the update. You rhymed off a whole bunch of stats there on the downtown program, and I was hoping that maybe we could get a report back to the board, a wholesome report on that program. We invested significant resources in that. It was a trial, I suppose. So if we can get some reporting back so that we're able to evaluate the success of the work that was done, and also just to understand like what our goals and objectives were, and did we meet those goals and objectives, and then all stack with it. It'd be great if we could have that feature review.
I think that would be great. Put that on October's agenda. Please.
Chair, that is necessarily already in the planning, a fulsome report and presentation, and some interesting observations. We did have some research being done at the same time as a result of that, and I think that's informative to the board, and I think they'll be quite interested to hear about that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. A bit of a trend or a theme today, just picking up on that though, as this report sort of reflects back on the last period. And you've given us some stats and numbers. Could you consider including in the next report, though, some projections? Again, given the state of emergency that was declared and as it pertains to the geographic area, what might we anticipate in terms of change in numbers or how are our service members going to be addressing the fact that we're putting more focus on the items contained within that emergency?
So we will attempt to do as best as possible. I think so. It's just with, again, we do recognize, so we'll present what we, our reaction to, like that, the collection of that, the data that, as we're collecting and what it looks like. But in terms of predictions, it's a little, having not been here before, we will be a little challenging to, we don't know what the effect will be yet, but certainly we'll present what we have as it develops. Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair. Just, I'm going to try to say this in a question, but kind of statement/question. Chief, when our officers are downtown with a special constables or police officer, and they visually see a crime, and they go and deal with that crime, is the harm impact lower or higher than if it was called in? Proactive policing versus reactive.
An excellent question. Which is so with respect to the and we do separate proactively detected harm, and I think that's an incredibly important number in terms of an effective police service, and so the community-based harm. Absolutely. So if we're getting called to it, that's a community-based harm, and that is noted separately than a proactively detected harm. So they're both counted, but counted separately. They both have weights attached to them, which is dependent on the offense. So complex question, but excellent question in that, are we capturing that data? We are. And are both numbers incredibly important? Yes. So what we would like to see as a police service, no one wants to see crime, but we would like to see the increasing proactively detected crime before there's victims. And to your point, if we come across the crime, that's proactively detected because we're there, because we're looking for it, versus I've just been a victim of a crime. This has happened to me. That happens in any given population. What we want to see is that being reduced. So, but harm is still proactively detected. It's still noteworthy and important to measure, because if we didn't, it could result in community-based harm. So it's still very much crime, and it's still very much harm that is counted.
They the exact same weight.
So the weight is dependent on the offense that was detected. So,
Right. But if it was proactive, they caught somebody as they were stealing a car, versus called in, my car is stolen, and then finding that car at some point, do they equal the same amount of points?
So your question again, so if they found a stolen vehicle that's or as it's being stolen, that's actually still a community-based harm. It's one of those where there are certain offenses that fall under proactivity, and generally, and it gets into the weeds here, but so firearms being detected in a vehicle stop. So an officer pulls over a vehicle, she goes up to the vehicle, there's an irregular traffic stop, and inside it's determined lawful cause, there's narcotics and firearms. Those are proactively detected, and the weights assigned to possession of an unlawful firearm, controlled substance, those offenses have weights assigned by the judiciary under the crime severity index. That is set apart from us. Now, offenses related to, so if an officer comes across, it's a terrible example, but at the same time, it highlights, so if an officer comes across a sexual assault in progress, it's a sexual assault. There's a victim. That's a community-based harm. Someone is being harmed. So that, no matter how it's determined, whether it's called in or it's an officer comes upon it and sees it happening and stops it immediately, both those are, that is a community-based harm. So it depends on the offense, but the weights for all offenses are set by the crime severity index.
Okay. So if you have more police officers out on the street, is it going to result in a higher harm number because you have more eyes on, or is it going to result in a lower harm number, recognizing that my belief is that more police officers equal safer streets.
And therein lies the problem with Canadian crime data. So this board and this service has gone out of its way to make this city safe. The danger in when you call all crime the same is that the safer the city is, the worse it looks, because your officers are out there conducting proactive stops and they're stopping and they're looking for stuff. But it doesn't matter in a crime number, because if an officer stops guns and drugs, your city looks worse because they found that stuff. That's incredibly valuable. The challenge, more officers allows us to do more proactive work. And I argue, and I think it's safe to say it's a sound argument to make, if you stop things before they occur, it's more valuable to the society and to the community. If you find more guns and drugs and cars on vehicle stops, that stops, or the potential for robberies later on with the use of those firearms, had we not stopped that car with those individuals, that's a crime harm versus a proactively detected harm. The more police officers out there doing more proactive police work keeps your community safer. And I'll fight that argument all day. And I think that's a safe argument to make. The fewer officers, the less proactivity. The reality is, you may have lower harm, overall harm, but very little proactivity is going on. And so it's a tricky number. So it looks like you're a safer city. No, your people aren't there stopping things before they occur. You may even have increased community-based harm because officers aren't able to do proactive work. Measuring crime is complex, and it honestly, it requires a more nuanced touch than what StatsCan will come out with. Our people are doing some phenomenal work in this city. We've dropped crime harm in certain locations, and our proactively detected crime has gone up. It doesn't mean it's an unsafe city. It means we're stopping it before it, and it's being detected before it can create greater community harm.
Just one more, maybe for the future. Some point, I'm not expecting this the next 2 weeks or month, but maybe for next year. One of the criteria that I think really matters when we are growing the number of officers in service is reported crime response versus officer found response. Like, because I thought that and honestly, I thought till today, every time an officer saw it, it was considered proactive versus responsive. So I don't know if there's a way we can report that. Maybe we already do, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, when we do the, for our next update on the, yeah, that's on it. Perfect. So that's why I knew it was top of mind. So for October's meeting, Mayor Nuttall, I think maybe just an expansion of, because we are getting that data, but obviously we're looking for a little bit more depth to what that data means. So perhaps for our October, we have the team look at that proactive versus reactive. At least that's how I call it. But I think that will answer the mayor's question.
Thanks. Just a quick point on this, like if you're doing the proactive policing and you discover a firearm in a vehicle stop, then you have unlawful possession of a firearm. Let's say that's the charge. That has a lower harm score than if that person uses that firearm for an armed robbery. That's a higher harm score in the crime severity index. So like it is reflected in the data. If you're using the gun to commit a crime, you're going to get a higher crime score. If you catch the gun before the crime's committed, that's still a crime, but a lower crime score.
Yes, and that is an excellent observation. Absolutely agree. Now it gets a little wonky with, so if I stop a vehicle and I find a great quantity of drugs and someone is charged with possession for the purposes of trafficking or trafficking in narcotics or drugs, that is a far higher score than simple possession, which would have a harm score. So it depends. And I mean, and I don't mean to make it like it is supposed to be complex, because if it was easy to measure crime, all we would do is volume. And to the mayor's point, it's an excellent question. Like, how do you actually measure crime? There's two sides to that proactivity. Yes, we're proactively out there detecting it, which is an incredible number, but also with more officers and the front line being asked and looking at our crime hotspots and their reattendance there. If they're in those hotspots and their presence there, And we know over time through data trends that crime occurs there more often. But because the car is sitting there and the officer's sitting in that car or they're out there talking to people, as a generality, Johnny Criminalis shows up and there's a police officer sitting in a highly visible car. There's a deterrence factor there. I mean, sure, you could commit the crime, but I mean, I'm not going to speak to the intelligence side of that. But I mean, the reality is if you're going to commit a crime in front of an officer, the likelihood of getting caught is far greater. So maybe that person doesn't commit the crime. So it's the reduction of crime happening in hotspots, but the increased detection of proactively detected crime are both measures of excellent police performance. It's not a simple calculation, but it does require that we do bring this data to the board, and the proactively is separately measured. So we do capture that. And we will have that in the next report for sure. And please, those are excellent questions, and happy to field those all day long.
Thanks, Chair. One question, just in some of the proactive policing and stuff in our state of emergency, one of the claims from the mayor was to abolish these silos. Speaking with Deputy Chief, in the incident with the tent out front of one of our service providers was 100% proactive policing and great work. Is there a way we can get a report to the board of service providers that are actually participating and cooperating with police to better our city as we do reduce silos? And I understand that, police don't want to do the bad guy and, talk about partners, but I think the problem is we're always tiptoeing around stuff like this. We're just creating the silos. If we don't call people to the carpet, let's, be honest and frank, then we never resolve issues. So.
Chair, and appreciating, thank you for the question. That's a challenging question to answer because context matters. I recently had a conversation with one of our service providers, and it was cordial and professional. There was a fair amount of disagreement with respect to perspectives regarding a recent portrayal in the media, and I expressed my concerns on behalf of this organization for the impact on our members and the great work that they do, and whether it was intentional or not. And I think we came to some version of an agreement, and it was respectful. That instance, it depends on which time and at which location, because sometimes we work very well with some providers, but at the same time, the next day we run into a situation and you're like, that's not what happened. That is absolutely not what happened. Why would that be portrayed that way? Why would someone say that? And so there's no, we can look, but it comes down to the anecdotal on individual instances, and it becomes incredibly, we regularly work with a number of service agencies. We rely on them, quite honestly, most, because we're not able to handle, so we rely on CMHA because mental health is that's not our area, right? So we respond when we need their assistance. Paramedics, when we get there, it's medical. Like there's a whole host of agencies that we have great relationships with, but it depends on the instance. And I only say that because I know what you're asking. That's fair. And we know we're the bad guy all the time. Like no one loves us. We're doing our job wrong if everyone loves us all the time. We're not going to make everyone happy. That's not our work. Our work is to keep our community safe. So someone's always going to hate what we're doing because it's too much or too little. That's the nature of the work we do.
My fear is, and thank you for that, but I just also believe so there was a portrayal of the incident on Mulcaster that was promoted and encouraged by police to do that, to go there. So we're always in the reactive in our posting and stuff. So this is some of the stuff I'm talking about. We're going to go to the public and ask in the 10 range of increase in budget. Right. That makes you the bad guys in the world we live in, right? It's, more police budget. So understanding it's complex and every incident has, its own nuance. I just think that if people know that it can be public on relations and how we do things, I think we break down our silos where people will want to participate and be part of the solution and not dug into being part of the problem. So
Thank you. Yeah, I don't disagree, Deputy Mayor. I don't. And we have taken efforts to address that and the social media side and the public informing and I am cognizant of that event and it did create some concerns for this organization and efforts have been made to redress that. Please.
Yeah, so thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I think you just, you've highlighted the frustration that exists underneath the surface. And it can bring some pretty strong emotions out from all sides, right? The encampment investigation that took place, do we have a budget impact on that as of yet?
Specifically the double homicide.
Correct, yes.
So there's a little bit of lingering costs, but as of, I think in the first 2 weeks of August, we'd experienced about $180,000 in additional overtime to respond to that occurrence.
And apologies, Mayor. So, but that will be a rolling cost, right? And you recapture the investigation and the hours, and the part of that's work. But at the same time, because it occurred and because there's that cost is very difficult to actually. That's a fixed cost for just that overtime of that scene. But that's what people see. The costs keep running up on that.
So call it 200K, 2.25 by the time we're said and done on overtime. Are there additional costs related to removing encampments or ensuring there's stable, secure spaces when encampments are being removed?
So, sorry, Chair, to answer. So, with respect to the most recent one, there was just a reorganization of personnel working at the time. Again, not to crystal ball, not to know. So if we know all the time, like we can, we do our best to alter schedules as best as possible with foreknowledge if we can. And again, to address, we are a reactive organization as well as a proactive. So when we can, we use resources that are working to minimize the costs. But we can't always do that, especially in emergency circumstances, in particular, or a violent incident where we have to immediately respond.
I would suggest the cost related to that double homicide. We've identified one line item, which is overtime. The cost related to it would be substantial. Obviously, the initial investigation that went in prior to the charges being laying the charges, the investigation, the follow-up, everything, it's not a couple $100,000, but it's difficult to identify exactly what's related to that event, but it would be significant to our budget, in my opinion, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions for the chief? Great. So that concludes our open meeting this morning. I'd like a motion to move in camera in accordance with section 44(1)B and 1D of the Community Safety and Policing Act to deal with legal and contractual matters. Mr. Khan. Mayor Nuttall, assume everybody's in favor, and just to advise those who may be watching, this will conclude the open. Thank you.